Captain Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal of the observation deck's viewport, watching Earth shrink to a pale blue dot in the distance. The evacuation ships were scattered across the void like silver seeds blown by an invisible wind, carrying the remnants of humanity to destinations unknown. Behind them, their home world burned under the crimson glow of alien occupation. "Still can't believe we're actually doing this," muttered Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, joining her at the window. His dark eyes reflected the starlight streaming through the reinforced glass. 300 years of human civilization, and we're running away like scared children. Sarah turned from the viewport, her commander's uniform crisp despite the chaos of the past 72 hours. "We're not running, Marcus. We're regrouping. There's a difference." The bridge of the UES Defiance hummed with activity as crew members monitored the massive evacuation fleet. 200 ships of various sizes formed a loose convoy, protected by 37 military vessels, all that remained of Earth's once mighty space force. The Kythera had struck without warning, their massive dreadnoughts appearing in Earth's orbit like dark omens. Within hours, every major city lay in ruins, and the planet's defenses had crumbled. "Captain," called out Navigation Officer Lieutenant Emma Walsh from her station. "Admiral Kozlov is requesting a command conference in 15 minutes. Sarah nodded, straightening her shoulders. The weight of command had never felt heavier. At 34, she was young for a ship captain, but the war had aged everyone beyond their years. "Tell the Admiral I'll be there." The conference room aboard the flagship UES Sovereign was cramped and thick with tension. Admiral Viktor Kozlov, a bear of a man with silver hair and steel-gray eyes, stood at the head of the table studying a holographic display of their current position. The other ship captains sat in silence, their faces grim. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kozlov began, his Russian accent thick with exhaustion, "we have approximately 6 million civilians spread across this convoy. Our supplies will last maybe 4 months if we're careful. The Kythera fleet is 2 days behind us in closing." Captain James Morrison of the UES Revenge leaned forward. "Admiral, with respect, we should have made our stand at Earth. At least there we had orbital platforms and we would have been slaughtered," Kozlov interrupted. "The Kythera technology is 50 years ahead of ours, maybe more. Their weapons cut through our shields like paper. Our only advantage is that we're mobile now." Sarah spoke up. "What about the colony worlds? Surely some of them." "All gone," Kozlov said quietly. "Mars fell 12 hours ago. The last transmission from Titan was not encouraging. The Kythera aren't just conquering our worlds, they're strip mining them. Taking everything of value and leaving dead rock behind." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah felt her heart sink as the reality of their situation settled in. Humanity was truly alone, cast adrift in the vast ocean of space with nowhere to call home. "So what's the plan?" asked Captain Lisa Park of the UES Vengeance. Kozlov activated a star chart, showing their current trajectory. "We have 3 options. First, we can try to reach the Proxima Centauri system. There's a research station there, minimal facilities, but it's something. Second, we can head for the Kepler 442 system. Long journey, but there's a potentially habitable world there. Third." He paused, his fingers dancing over the holographic controls. A new section of the star chart appeared, showing a region of space marked with warning symbols. "Third, we can go into the void." The void was what spacers called the vast empty region between the spiral arms of the galaxy. It was a place where stars were few and far between, where space itself seemed to swallow light and hope. Few ships had ever ventured into its depths, and fewer still had returned. "The void?" Morrison shook his head. "That's suicide, Admiral. Our ships aren't designed for that kind of journey." "Maybe not," Kozlov replied. "But the Kythera won't follow us there. They're conquerors, not explorers. They want worlds to harvest, not empty space to wander." Sarah studied the star chart, her mind racing. The void represented the unknown, but the other options led to systems where the Kythera would eventually find them. How long would it take to reach the outer edge of the void? "With our current fleet speed, about 3 weeks," Kozlov answered. "But that's assuming we don't run into any problems. And once we're there? Then we figure out how to survive long enough to build something new. Maybe find a way to hit back. The debate that followed was heated but brief. In the end, they voted. The Void won by a narrow margin, not because it was the best option, but because it was the only one that offered any hope of avoiding immediate destruction. As the captains filed out of the conference room, Sarah lingered behind. "Admiral, can I have a word?" Kozlov waited until they were alone, then slumped into his chair. For the first time since the evacuation began, he looked his age. "You think I'm leading them to their deaths?" "I think you're doing the only thing you can do," Sarah replied. "But I have to ask, do you really believe we can survive out there?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah, I've been in the military for 37 years. I've seen wars, disasters, impossible situations. But I've never seen anything like this. The Kithara aren't just trying to defeat us, they're trying to erase us. Make it like humanity never existed." He stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the convoy of ships. "So yes, I believe we can survive. Because the alternative is extinction, and I'm not ready to let that happen. Not on my watch." 3 days later, the convoy crossed the boundary into the void. The change was subtle at first. Stars became dimmer, fewer, until they were nothing more than distant pinpricks in an ocean of black. The civilian ships began to spread out, their captains nervous about the empty space around them. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the sensor displays. The void was living up to its name. Their long-range scanners, capable of detecting objects at 50 light-years, showed nothing but empty space in every direction. "It's like flying through a cemetery," murmured Chief Engineer Tom Bradley, a stocky man with grease-stained hands and worried eyes. "Makes you wonder what happened to all the matter that should be here." "Maybe it was never here to begin with," Sarah replied. "Some regions of space are just naturally empty." "Or maybe something cleared it out," added Marcus, his voice deliberately casual. "Something that didn't want neighbors." The thought sent a chill down Sarah's spine, but she kept her expression neutral. The crew was already on edge, they didn't need their captain showing fear. The first week in the void passed without incident. The convoy settled into a routine, with the military ships forming a protective perimeter around the civilian vessels. Supplies were carefully rationed, and work crews began the long process of converting cargo ships into mobile habitats. But the void was taking its toll. Reports of depression and anxiety were increasing daily. Some civilians were calling it the empty madness, a creeping sense of isolation and despair that seemed to seep into people's bones. The ship's counselors were working overtime, but there were only so many of them to go around. Sarah found herself spending more time on the observation deck, staring out at the star-sparse darkness. It was during one of these sessions that she first noticed the anomaly. "Computer, magnify Sector 77 Alpha," she commanded. The viewport display zoomed in on a section of space that looked no different from any other, except for a faint shimmer, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. "Lieutenant Walsh, I need you to run a full spectrum analysis on these coordinates," Sarah called out. Emma's fingers flew over her console. "Running analysis now, Captain. I'm getting some unusual readings. There's definitely something there, but it's not showing up on our standard sensors." "What kind of something?" "That's the problem, I can't tell. It's like it's there and not there at the same time. The gravitational sensors are picking up a mass signature, but visual and electromagnetic scans show nothing." Sarah frowned. In her years of space travel, she'd never encountered anything like this. "Set course for the anomaly. But keep us at a safe distance." "Aye, Captain." As the Defiance approached the mysterious shimmer, other ships in the convoy began to take notice. The comm channels filled with chatter as scientists and military personnel tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "It's definitely artificial," reported Dr. Elena Vasquez, the convoy's chief xenobiologist, from her lab aboard the research vessel UES Discovery. "The electromagnetic signature is too regular to be natural. It's like a cloaking field of some kind." Admiral Kozlov's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain Chen, I want you to take a small task force and investigate. But be careful, we can't afford to lose any more ships." Sarah assembled her team carefully. The Defiance would take point, accompanied by the destroyer UES Vigilant and the science vessel UES Curiosity. The rest of the convoy would hold position at what they hoped was a safe distance. As they drew closer to the anomaly, the shimmer began to resolve into something more solid. It was a structure massive, alien, and utterly unlike anything in human experience. The surface appeared to be made of some kind of crystalline material that bent light in impossible ways, making it difficult to determine the object's true size and shape. "My God," whispered Dr. Vasquez over the comm at a station. "An alien space station. Any signs of life?" Sarah asked. "Negative. No heat signatures, no energy readings beyond the cloaking field. If anyone's home, they're keeping very quiet." Sarah made a decision that would change the course of human history. "All ships, hold position. I'm taking a shuttle over for a closer look." The protests from her crew were immediate and vocal, but Sarah was determined. As the convoy's senior military commander on the scene, she needed to see this with her own eyes. The shuttle bay of the Defiance was a bustle of activity as the small craft was prepared for launch. "I'm going with you," Marcus announced, strapping himself into the co-pilot's seat. "Like hell you are," Sarah replied. "If something happens to me, you'll need to get the convoy out of here. And if something happens to you while I'm sitting here safe and sound, I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I'd been there to help. We're partners, Sarah. That means we face the unknown together." Despite the gravity of the situation, Sarah found herself smiling. Marcus had been her second in command for 3 years, and she'd never regretted the partnership. "Fine. But if we die, I'm blaming you." "Fair enough." The shuttle's engines hummed to life, and they glided away from the Defiance toward the mysterious station. As they approached, the structure's true immensity became apparent. It was easily 10 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide, with organic-looking curves and spires that seemed to grow from the main hull like crystalline trees. There, Marcus pointed to a section of the station's hull. "Looks like a docking port." Sarah guided the shuttle toward the indicated opening. As they drew near, the station's hull seemed to shimmer and shift, creating an aperture just large enough for their small craft. The moment they passed through, the opening sealed behind them with a sound like singing crystal. They found themselves in a vast chamber filled with soft, blue-white light. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly, making Sarah's eyes water. The air was breathable, their sensors confirmed it, but it carried a strange, ozone-like scent that made her skin tingle. "This place is incredible," Marcus breathed, his voice echoing in the vast space. "How old do you think it is?" Before Sarah could answer, the chamber filled with a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, and suddenly the air in front of them shimmered and coalesced into a figure. It was humanoid in shape but clearly alien. Tall and slender, with skin that seemed to be made of living crystal. Its eyes were large and multifaceted, like those of an insect, and they reflected the chamber's light in dazzling patterns. When it spoke, its voice was like music. "Welcome, children of the distant star," it said. "I am Zarathul, keeper of the sanctuary. You have traveled far to reach this place of refuge." Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm, but something about the creature's manner stopped her from drawing it. You can speak our language?" "Language is but one form of communication," Zarathul replied. "I speak to your minds, and your minds interpret my words in forms you understand. You are the survivors, are you not? The ones who fled the Devourers?" "The Devourers? You mean the Kithara?" "That is what you call them. We know them by their true nature, they are the Devourers of worlds, the silence that follows. They have consumed 1,000 civilizations, and now they seek to consume yours." Marcus stepped forward, his engineer's curiosity overcoming his caution. "This station, did your people build it?" "My people are called the Architects. We were among the first to encounter the Devourers, many thousands of years ago. We fought them, as you fought them, and like you, we were forced to flee. But we did not flee into emptiness. We fled into purpose." Zarathul gestured, and the chamber around them began to change. The walls became transparent, revealing the vast interior of the station. It was a city, no, a world, contained within the crystalline hull. Towers of living light stretched toward the center, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of solidified starlight. "This is the sanctuary," Zarathal explained. "A place where refugees from the Devourers can find safety and purpose. Many species have sought shelter here over the millennia. Some have moved on to find new homes among the stars. Others have remained to join the great work." "The great work?" Sarah asked. "The building of the fleet." The view shifted again, and Sarah gasped. Surrounding the station were hundreds of ships, no, thousands. They were unlike anything she'd ever seen, sleek and organic looking, as if they'd been grown rather than built. They moved through space with a grace that made human vessels look clumsy by comparison. For 10,000 years, the refugees who come here have worked together to build a fleet capable of challenging the Devourers, Zarathal continued. Each species contributes their knowledge, their technology, their unique perspectives. The fleet grows stronger with each new addition. Marcus was practically vibrating with excitement. "You're talking about a war fleet? A fleet designed to fight the Kythera. The Devourers believe they are invincible because they have never faced united resistance. They conquer worlds one at a time, preventing species from joining together in common cause. But here, in the void, we have had time to unite. Time to prepare." Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. "How many ships are in the fleet?" "Currently? 12,734 vessels of various classes. But it is not the number that matters, it is the unity. The fleet is crewed by representatives of 47 different species, each bringing their own strengths to the battle." "And you're offering to let humanity join this alliance?" "I am offering your species a choice," Zarathal replied. "You can remain in the sanctuary, safe from the Devourers but forever exiled from your home. Or you can join the fleet, contribute your unique human perspective to the great work, and help us take the war to the Devourers themselves." Sarah looked at Marcus, seeing her own thoughts reflected in his eyes. This was beyond anything they'd hoped for when they fled Earth. Not just survival, but the possibility of striking back. "I need to consult with my people," she said finally. "This is too big a decision for me to make alone." "Of course," Zarathal nodded. "But do not take too long. The Devourers are already adapting to your absence. Soon, they will begin expanding their search. When they do, even the void will not be safe." The journey back to the convoy felt like a dream. Sarah's mind was spinning with everything she'd seen and heard. The idea that humanity might not only survive but actually fight back against the Kythera seemed too good to be true. The emergency council meeting aboard the Sovereign was the largest in the convoy's short history. Not just the military commanders, but civilian leaders, scientists, and representatives from every major ship were present. Sarah's report was met with a mixture of excitement and skepticism. "It sounds too good to be true," said Dr. Richard Hawthorne, the convoy's chief physicist. "An alien alliance that just happens to be fighting the same enemy we are? What's the catch?" "The catch is that it's real," Sarah replied. "I've seen the fleet with my own eyes. These aren't desperate refugees hiding in the dark, they're a military force that's been preparing for this war for thousands of years." "But what would they want from us?" asked Counselor Maria Santos, the elected representative of the civilian ships. "We're just one species among 47. What could we possibly contribute that they don't already have?" Sarah had been thinking about this question during the flight back. Human ingenuity. Our ability to adapt, to think outside the box. Every species brings something unique to the table. Our contribution might be exactly what they need to finally defeat the Kythera. The debate that followed was intense. Some argued for accepting the offer immediately, while others counseled caution. The civilians were divided, some wanted nothing more than a safe haven where they could rebuild their lives, while others burned with the desire for revenge against the aliens who had destroyed their world. Finally, Admiral Kozlov called for order. "We need to make a decision. The architects are offering us two choices: sanctuary or war. I can't make this choice for 6 million people. Then let's ask them, Sarah suggested. Put it to a vote. Let every adult in the convoy decide for themselves. The vote took place over the next 24 hours. The result was closer than anyone had expected. 52% voted to join the fleet, 48% voted to remain in the sanctuary. The slim margin reflected the deep divisions within the human survivors. We can't split the convoy, Kozlov said after the results were announced. We're stronger together. Maybe we don't have to, Sarah replied. The architects said some refugees choose to stay while others join the fleet. Maybe we can do both. Those who want to fight can join the fleet, while those who want to rebuild can stay in the sanctuary. It was a compromise that satisfied no one completely but that everyone could live with. Over the next week, the convoy began to split. Roughly half the ships would remain at the sanctuary, establishing a permanent human presence in the alien station. The other half would join the fleet, contributing their crews and resources to the war effort. Sarah faced her own difficult choice. The Defiance was a military vessel, clearly destined for the fleet. But she had grown close to many of the civilian leaders during the evacuation, and the thought of leaving them behind felt like abandoning her responsibilities. Go, Counselor Santos told her during their final meeting. We'll be safe here. The architects have protected refugees for thousands of years, they'll protect us too. But the fleet needs leaders who understand what it means to be human. They need you. The day of departure was emotional. Families were split apart, some choosing safety while others chose war. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as the ships bound for the fleet pulled away from the sanctuary. Behind them, the remaining vessels began the process of docking with the alien station, beginning their new lives as permanent residents of the void. No turning back now, Marcus said, joining her at the viewport. No, Sarah agreed. No turning back. The journey to the fleet's staging area took 3 days. As they approached the massive congregation of ships, Sarah was struck by the diversity of the vessels. Some were sleek and organic like the architect's designs, while others were angular and mechanical. A few looked like they'd been grown rather than built, their hulls covered in what appeared to be scales or feathers. Welcome to the fleet, came a transmission from the flagship. The voice was unfamiliar, clearly alien, but the warmth in it was unmistakable. This is Admiral Keftar of the Zephyrian Navy. We are honored to welcome humanity to our ranks. Sarah found herself assigned to a mixed task force under the command of Admiral Keftar, a being who looked like a cross between a dolphin and a praying mantis. The other human ships were scattered throughout the fleet, their crews integrated with alien counterparts in a careful process designed to share knowledge and build trust. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Human technology was analyzed and integrated into fleet systems, while human crews learned to operate alien equipment. The differences were staggering. Where human ships relied on brute force and heavy armor, alien vessels used elegant solutions that achieved the same results with a fraction of the energy. Look at this, Tom Bradley said excitedly, showing Sarah a holographic display of a Zephyrian engine design. They're using controlled quantum tunneling to achieve faster-than-light travel. Our jump drives are like sledgehammers compared to their surgical precision. But it wasn't just technology that was being shared. The fleet was a vast repository of tactical knowledge, accumulated over thousands of years of conflict with the Kithara. Sarah found herself in strategy sessions with beings whose species had been fighting the aliens for longer than human civilization had existed. The Devourers have 3 primary weaknesses, explained Admiral Keftar during one such session. First, they rely heavily on their technological superiority. They expect their enemies to be primitive and are often unprepared for sophisticated tactics. Second, they have never faced a truly united enemy. Their strategy is based on divide and conquer. Third, they are overconfident. They believe themselves to be the ultimate evolution of life in the universe. So how do we exploit these weaknesses? Sarah asked. By being everything they do not expect, replied another admiral, a crystalline being whose name Sarah couldn't pronounce. By showing them that the galaxy is full of life that will not submit to their tyranny. The fleet's battle plan was ambitious beyond anything Sarah had imagined. Rather than simply defending against Kithara attacks, they would go on the offensive, striking at the aliens' resource bases and supply lines. The goal was not just to defeat the Kythera, but to push them back to their original territory and ensure they could never again threaten the free species of the galaxy.
It's been tried before, admitted Admiral Keftar.
3 times in the past, the fleet has launched major offensives against the Devourers. Each time, we achieved initial success before being pushed back.
But this time is different. How? Sarah asked.
This time, we have something we have never had before: complete tactical surprise. The Devourers believe they have scattered your people to the stars.
They do not know about the fleet, do not know about the sanctuary. For the first time in 10,000 years, we have the advantage. The fleet's first target was a Kythera mining operation in the Vega system.
Intelligence reports indicated that the aliens were strip mining the system's asteroid belt, using the raw materials to build more ships for their expansion fleet. It was a vital resource that, if destroyed, would significantly slow their advance. Sarah found herself commanding a squadron of mixed human and alien ships, designated Task Force Retribution.
The name had been her suggestion, a reminder of what they were fighting for.
The task force included the Defiance, 2 other human vessels, and 4 alien ships of various designs. Remember, Admiral Keftar's voice came over the calm as the fleet prepared to jump. Our goal is not just to destroy the mining operation.
We want to send a message to the Devourers. We want them to know that their victims are fighting back. The jump to the Vega system was Sarah's first experience with fleet-coordinated faster-than-light travel.
Unlike the violent, jarring experience of human jump drives, the fleet's method was smooth and graceful. One moment they were in empty space, the next they were approaching Vega's asteroid belt. The Kythera mining operation was vast, hundreds of mechanical harvesters stripping asteroids down to their component atoms, while massive collector ships gathered the raw materials. Guardian vessels patrolled the edges of the operation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons.
All ships, execute Alpha pattern, Sarah commanded. The fleet's tactics were based on coordination and precision rather than brute force.
As the human tendency toward direct assault was tempered by alien subtlety, the result was a fighting style that was both aggressive and elegant.
Task Force Retribution struck like a scalpel.
The alien ships used their superior speed and maneuverability to confuse the Kythera sensors, while the human vessels provided heavy firepower. The Defiance and her sister ships had been retrofitted with fleet weapons, energy cannons that could slice through Kythera armor like it was paper.
Target the collector ships first, Sarah ordered. Without them, the harvesters are useless. The battle was fierce but brief. The Kythera had been caught completely off guard, their forces scattered and unprepared for coordinated attack.
Within an hour, the mining operation was nothing but debris floating in space.
All ships, withdraw to Rally Point Alpha, Admiral Keftar commanded. Mission accomplished. As the fleet regrouped in deep space, Sarah felt a mixture of elation and disbelief. They had done it, they had actually struck back at the Kythera and won. For the first time since Earth's fall, humanity had drawn alien blood.
But the victory came with a price.
The Kythera response was swift and brutal.
Within days, reports began filtering in of increased attacks on human colony worlds. The aliens were clearly sending a message of their own resistance would be met with overwhelming force. "They're getting desperate," Admiral Keftar observed during the post-battle debriefing.
"This level of retaliation suggests that our attack caused more damage than we realized. They're trying to intimidate us into backing down."
"It's working," admitted Captain Morrison of the Revenge.
"We're receiving transmissions from human survivors throughout the galaxy.
They're begging us to stop the attacks before the Kythera wipe them out completely." Sarah felt the weight of command pressing down on her. Every victory against the Kythera seemed to result in reprisals against innocent civilians. But stopping now would mean abandoning any hope of liberating humanity's worlds.
"We can't stop," she said finally.
"If we back down now, the Kythera will know that threatening civilians is an effective tactic. They'll use it against every species they encounter." "Then we need to escalate," said Admiral Keftar. "Hit them harder, faster, in multiple locations simultaneously. Force them to spread their forces thin trying to defend everything.
The second phase of the fleet's campaign was even more ambitious. Rather than single strikes, they would launch coordinated attacks on 12 different Kythera installations simultaneously. The goal was to stretch the aliens' resources to the breaking point and force them to make difficult choices about what to defend. Sarah found herself leading one of the attack forces, targeting a Kythera shipyard in the Wolf 359 system. The intelligence reports were sobering. The shipyard was heavily defended, protected by a fleet of warships and orbital defense platforms. It would be their hardest target yet. The key is timing, explained the fleet's chief tactician, a spider-like being called Weaver. All 12 attacks must begin within minutes of each other. If the Devourers realize what we're doing, they'll consolidate their forces and crush us one by one. The approach to Wolf 359 was tense. Unlike the Vega system, the Kythera here were clearly expecting trouble. Their patrol ships moved in careful patterns, sensors sweeping space for any sign of intruders. The fleet ships had to use every trick in their arsenal to avoid detection. Cloaking fields at maximum, reported the Zephyrian ship captain whose vessel was leading the approach. But we can't maintain this for long. The energy drain is enormous. How long until the attack window? Sarah asked. 17 minutes, came the reply from the fleet flagship. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. Sarah could feel the tension on the bridge of the Defiance, her crew ready for action but forced to wait. The Kythera shipyard hung in space before them, a massive construction that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. Partially completed warships floated in its bays like sleeping giants. All ships, attack window is now open, Admiral Keftar's voice came over the comm. Execute, execute, execute. The fleet ships dropped their cloaking fields and opened fire simultaneously. The Kythera were caught off guard, but not as badly as at Vega. Their defensive systems came online quickly, filling space with deadly energy beams and projectiles. Concentrate fire on the shipyard's main support structure, Sarah ordered. If we can collapse the central framework, the whole thing will tear itself apart. The battle was the fiercest Sarah had ever experienced. The Kythera fought with the desperation of beings who knew they were facing extinction. Their ships threw themselves at the fleet vessels with no regard for their own survival, trying to break through the attack formation. Hull breach on Deck 7. Tom Bradley reported from engineering. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but we've lost main power to the port weapon systems. Reroute power from non-essential systems, Sarah ordered. We need every gun we can get. The tide of battle began to turn as the fleet's superior tactics and coordination told. The Kythera ships were powerful individually, but they fought like lone wolves, each captain trying to win the battle single-handedly. The fleet ships worked together, covering each other's weaknesses and concentrating their fire on single targets. The shipyard's main support structure is collapsing, reported the sensor operator. The whole facility is coming apart. Sarah watched in satisfaction as the massive construction began to tear itself apart. Incomplete warships tumbled through space, their hulls cracking under stresses they were never designed to handle. Secondary explosions rippled through the facility as fuel and ammunition stores detonated. All ships, mission accomplished, Admiral Keftar announced. Withdraw to Rally Point Beta. The fleet had achieved its objectives at 9 of the 12 target systems. 3 attacks had been repelled, but the overall operation was a stunning success. The Kythera had lost nearly a third of their industrial capacity in a single coordinated strike. But the victory came with a sobering realization. The Kythera response was not what anyone had expected. Instead of launching reprisals against civilian populations, they began to withdraw from their newly conquered territories. Star systems that had been under alien occupation for months were suddenly abandoned, their Kythera forces pulled back to more defensible positions. They're consolidating, Admiral Keftar explained during the post-battle analysis. Instead of trying to hold everything, they're creating a core zone of heavily defended systems. They're digging in for a siege. That's actually good news, isn't it? Sarah asked. It means they're on the defensive now. Perhaps. Or perhaps they're preparing for something else. Something we haven't considered. The answer came 2 weeks later, when fleet reconnaissance ships detected a massive Kythera armada moving toward the edge of the galaxy. The force was enormous, over 5,000 ships, including vessel types that had never been seen before. The aliens weren't just consolidating their defenses, they were bringing in reinforcements.
"It's an invasion fleet," Weaver reported grimly. "They're calling for help from their home territories. Everything we've fought for, everything we've accomplished, could be undone in a matter of days." The mood in the fleet was grim. Even their most optimistic projections showed them being vastly outnumbered by the incoming Kythera reinforcements. Some of the alien admirals began to talk about falling back to the sanctuary, abandoning the offensive and returning to their defensive positions in the void. "We can't give up now," Sarah argued during the emergency council session. "We've proven that the Kythera can be beaten. If we retreat now, we'll never get another chance like this." "What do you propose?" asked Admiral Keftar. "We cannot match their numbers. Even with our technological advantages, we would be overwhelmed." Sarah had been thinking about this problem for days, and she thought she had an answer. "We don't fight them in a straight battle. We use their own tactics against them. We divide and conquer." The plan she proposed was audacious beyond anything the fleet had attempted. Instead of waiting for the Kythera reinforcements to arrive, they would strike at the enemy's home territories. Using the intelligence gathered from their previous battles, they would launch a massive assault on the Kythera's primary industrial worlds. "It's a suicide mission," one of the alien admirals protested. "Those systems are the most heavily defended in Kythera space. We'd be destroyed before we could do any significant damage." "Maybe," Sarah admitted. "But if we can cripple their industrial capacity, their reinforcement fleet will have nothing to come back to. They'll have to choose between continuing their expansion and defending their home worlds." The debate that followed was intense. Many of the fleet's officers were reluctant to risk everything on such a desperate gamble. But as reports continued to arrive about the size and strength of the approaching Kythera armada, the alternatives became increasingly grim. Finally, Admiral Keftar called for a vote. The decision was close, barely 60% in favor of Sarah's plan. But it was enough. "Very well," the Admiral announced. "We will take the war to the Devourer's home. All ships will begin preparations for Operation Exodus immediately." The weeks that followed were a frenzy of activity. The entire fleet was reorganized for the deep strike mission. Supply ships were loaded with everything they would need for an extended campaign in enemy territory. Intelligence teams worked around the clock to identify the most